Parents for Choice in Education, or PCE, is an Alberta-based nonprofit that campaigns hard for what they call maximum parental choice in schooling. Their mission? Parents should be calling all of the educational shots about how, where, and when their children learn, and not those nefarious aristocratic school boards. They defend a wide variety of educational options, everything from public to Catholic schools, charter schools, homeschooling, online learning, independent schools, and according to them, authentic school choice means more than just having many options when it comes to school. It means equitable funding, true parental autonomy, and letting schools pick their own teaching methods. They oppose any policy that, in their view, bypasses parental consent, especially when it comes to things like sexual education, curriculum choices, or simply how students communicate with their schools. They also argue that standardized testing is good, not just for accountability, but as a tool for parents to see how their child is doing. And they believe that competition between different types of schools will push quality higher across the board, because schools will then have to earn their students. PCE has pushed for things like taxpayer support to follow the child, meaning public funds shouldn't just go to the traditional public schools, but also to alternative settings like charter schools or homeschooling. In fact, they helped commission a report showing that independent schools and home education in Alberta saved taxpayers $1.9 billion over 8 years, according to their data. Politically, they lean socially conservative. They've opposed certain LGBTQS+ inclusive school policies and made strong statements about parental rights in relation to gender identity and sexual orientation. They frame themselves as guardians of parental authority, pushing for a world where parents, not government, decide what education looks like for their students. And that ideological foundation shapes everything that they do, including very heated concerns that they raise over Bill 24. Leading this charge in the opposition of Bill 24 was Donna Trimble. The executive director at the time, Trimble is a parent, an activist, and someone who ran this organization for many years while also fighting breast cancer. She is passionate, relentless, and here to tell us why Bill 24, a law that she claims undermines parental authority, is basically the apocalypse for parents everywhere. Bill 24 was officially titled An Act to Support Gay-Straight Alliances. It amended the Alberta School Act to force principals to immediately allow a gay-straight alliance student organization or a club when it was requested by a student. It explicitly stated that the term gay-straight alliance or queer-straight alliance must not be discouraged. It restricted parental notification, so principals and school staff were not allowed to inform parents about their child's involvement in one of these clubs. Groups like Parents for Choice in Education strongly opposed Bill 24 because they framed it as a massive overreach into parental authority and a serious infringement on their rights. Inside faces, David. Inside faces. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms launched a court challenge, arguing that Bill 24 violated parental constitutional rights, specifically their charter rights. Yeah, talking about a violation of charter rights is wild in 2025. One of the biggest legal objections to this bill, the blanket ban on notifying parents about gay-straight alliances or associated activities. There were no exceptions, even for younger children, and this was argued to be unconstitutional. However, the constitutional challenge was discontinued in 2019 because the Alberta School Act was replaced by a new Education Act, and the secrecy provisions from Bill 24 were removed. So essentially, Donna Trimble hated this bill because parents wouldn't know what their kids were doing, who they were meeting with, and what they were being taught, especially within the context of an alleged gay-straight alliance. They saw it as a provincial takeover of moral or sexual education, and by blocking parental notification about these Anonymous clubs, they argued that the government was undermining parents' roles in guiding their children's moral and sexual development. They also believed that it weakened local governance. Principals and school boards would lose power, and the minister could override and dictate school board policies. And religious schools were particularly worried about this because they were forced to adopt policies or ideological stances that they disagreed with. The outcome of this is that Bill 24 passed in September 2017 by a vote of 42 to 23 in the Alberta legislature, and because of the legal challenge and the later legislative changes, the controversial secrecy provisions were removed when the School Act was replaced. So today we're going to look at a CBC News interview with Donna Trimble, and she lays out her case with all the calm, measured subtlety of someone who's screaming that the sky is falling while raising 3 kids, battling breast cancer, and somehow still running a non-profit organization. So we're going to take a look at it, we're going to react to it live, and we are going to unpack exactly what maximum parental choice looks like in Donna's little conservative utopia. Let's get into it. Dismantling Hate starts now. The maximum quality of this video is 480p, so bear with on that. Let's hear from Donna Trimble.
School groups that are designed to provide support for students who are gay, lesbian, or transgender
Okay, that was too loud.
That was weird for me.
Take 2.
High school groups that are designed to provide support for students who are gay, lesbian, or transgender are causing controversy in Alberta. The NDP government has introduced a bill that would make it illegal for a school to inform a parent when their child joins a gay-straight alliance. But the Alberta United Conservatives are concerned that the groups will be used to teach sex ed without parental consent.
There is something to be said about framing this as illegal, because I think that really means something to a lot of us that isn't necessarily as bad as it sounds. I recently discovered that, at least in my province, it is illegal to not have a Remembrance Day school ceremony assembly. Because I think when people hear the word illegal, they imagine a SWAT team showing up and you are going to get drug away and thrown in jail for a decade, you know? And it just means that there will be investigation. It doesn't mean that you're immediately going to be arrested or penalized or anything. It just means no, you can't repeatedly out kids to their parents. I have so much to say about this topic, but I think we need to pace ourselves.
Donna Trimble is the Executive Director of Parents for Choice in Education. She joins me live from Calgary. Welcome to you.
Thank you very much for having me and allowing me to speak on behalf of thousands of very deeply concerned parents across the province.
Okay, what are your concerns here?
I think we preliminarily have to understand that we're not talking about high school clubs here. In the province of Alberta, there are no grade restrictions whatsoever. The Alberta GSA network is a support network for children to sign themselves up and their school GSAs up as young as 5, so K to 12 students. So we're talking about children as young as 5. We don't treat 5-year-olds the same way that we treat high school students. We do realize that this is a vulnerable group of students that require specific care for their needs, and each child is unique. But what we would say is that this bill, Bill 24, is an affront to the loving families across the province.
Listen, if you came from a loving family, a truly loving family, you would not need to legislate the school to inform those loving families about everything that student is doing at school. The way that she's framing it here as though a kindergarten student is going to be put into a gay-straight alliance by somebody else, as if the legislation doesn't explicitly state that it needs to be brought about by the students. And it is a student-led club. So that doesn't mean that there's going to be a teacher there administering any kind of curriculum as it relates to sexual education. That's not how clubs work. If you've witnessed school clubs in actions, it's messy, it's not structured, it's not organized. It's probably some older student trying to teach a bunch of grade ones how to play chess, and it's just a disaster. This one's eating the pieces, the other one's throwing them across the room, and the other one's sitting there crocheting. And you think, where did you get yarn? It's not something structured that's administered by adults. So if a group of young students wanted to put together a gay-straight alliance, I don't even really know what that would look like. Because students that young don't have a conceptualization, hopefully, of what sex as an act actually is. So if anything, they're going to be talking about who they love. If I was an administrator and a bunch of grade 1 students came up to me and said, we want to start a gay-straight alliance, I would definitely have questions as to what that means to them. Because that is really important when it comes to this conversation. And the way that those younger students would be envisioning a gay-straight alliance club, I guarantee would be worlds apart from what Donna Trimble would be conceptualizing as a gay-straight alliance as an adult. Our brains are different, our view of the world is different, so it's not the same thing. I can feel some fear-based stuff going on here in the way that she's talking. Also, where is she? She's in a newsroom? I don't know. Okay, let's keep going.
It would forbid schools from being responsive to the actual needs of individual students across the system without exception for anything, including the age of the child.
Okay, so these are groups, as I understand it, that are set up by students, allowed to be set up by students to help children who are lesbian, gay, transgendered, LGBTQ.
Transgendered, past tense. Only past tense.
Kids feel safe and free from bullying. What's wrong with that, whether you're 5 or whether you're 15?
Ooh, okay, good question. What's her toes? I don't remember.
You know what? Nothing's wrong with that. And Parents for Choice in Education has always said that we are not opposed to GSAs. What we do believe is that the professionals in the school must be able to be responsive to the specific needs of each unique child.
Is that a nothing burger, or did I not understand it? Because I would agree with that, but it also seemed very fluffy.
And that the research shows that these children do best with the maximum amount of family and parent support.
Well, yes. And if they were receiving that support from home, you would imagine that that student would be sharing this information with the people at home. I never felt homophobia from my parents. Well, I generally never felt any homophobia from my parents, and I had no problem sharing that with them when I felt ready. And it was a big moment for me when I felt ready to sit down and just say, hey, you know I'm queer, right? And the response was, well, yes, David, we know. Even though I felt like my parents already knew what the deal was, because, I guess they were paying attention, which was nice. It still was a big moment for me to be able to say it out loud, and it was my moment. Not to be taken from me by the educational professionals in my life who would just call home and say, did you know this? But I guess I never joined a GSA, so it's different. Unless somebody's individual safety is concerned, I don't think it needs to be told to parents. I don't think it needs to be told in parents in the same way that I don't think you need to make a phone call home to parents saying, hi, little Timmy is starting a chess club. Just wanted you to know. Click. Seems like a waste of time. Unless people are in danger, there's not a need to make that call, in my opinion at least.
Parents don't know that their children are in these clubs, or at least in the older years, know that some of these children may be suffering from, say, suicidal ideation. How can these parents support these children?
I generally try to stay away from sweeping generalizations or big blanket statements, but if your child is suffering with suicidal ideation and you have no clue, you are either not paying attention to your child or you do not have the capacity to notice what is happening with your child. And I do believe that most often it would be both. I just have a really hard time believing that a parent of a student who is suffering with suicidal ideation would receive that phone call from a school, and that would be the first time that they would hear about it. There is the potential that that's the case. However, you would be more susceptible to suicidal ideation if that phone call was made home and said, "Hi, David's a big flamer. I just wanted you to know." If that parent was very homophobic and then that student goes home and then you're putting them in an unsafe position, because a lot of people are unfortunately homophobic, transphobic, what have you. If we're looking at lessening the suicidal ideation amongst the queer population, I think you would be better off letting those students make their own choices about when they are going to share that information. But I guess we're also assuming that people in a gay-straight alliance are all queer in some way, and you don't have to be queer to be in the gay-straight alliance. So I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what they're fighting for. I mean, yeah, okay, I'm confused. I'm a little flustered. Let's just keep going.
The Ministry of Education and the NDP government actually cared about these children, again, children as young as 5 all the way to 18 in our schools, they would be expanding the resources for these children and ensuring that the number one priority is drawing parents in at the earliest possible.
Her eyes are open so wide, like maybe it's the morning and I'm looking at my eyes and they're not, like they're still a little closed, but she's got some wild eyes. I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
On top of this, Bill 24 has an amendment to Section 50.1. Okay. And that amendment states that parents have the right to notification and opt-out provisions for sexual content. Why would they have that amendment?
No, I don't think that's right. I don't think parents should have the right to opt out their children from sex education. I think that this idea of parental rights here in this context is definitely competing with the idea of parental responsibility. At some point, most everybody is going to go through puberty and go through the process of sexual maturity. And if you are not supporting them with evidence-based, peer-reviewed education about what is happening to their body, in my mind, it is just straight up child abuse to neglect that education or to do it in a way that is manipulative, as we see in most religious-based sexual education programs. Okay? It's not right. It's like giving somebody a piece of technology and then not teaching them how to use it or teaching them how to use it incorrectly. It doesn't set people up for success. And in my opinion, a lot of these groups do have a religious undertone to them, so it makes sense that it's kind of connecting that there. But parents should not have the right to opt out of that kind of education. It's not like it's an option. You need to have the education about how your body works, how other people's body works, and how the interaction between the two does things. It matters. It matters. It's a part of you. It's a part of who you are. It's a part of your identity. It's a part of your development. It is who you are as a fundamental human being on this planet. And neglecting that kind of education is abuse. Let's go.
Bill 24, unless there was an intention to introduce sexual content in some circumstances in these schools without the permission of parents. Okay, what we're saying is let parents know.
Okay, isn't it the child's choice, though, to out themselves?
Carol McNeil, I just saw her name there. Thank goodness for her. And I love that she's being a little bit combative here. And I don't know if it's just me projecting this onto Donna. Her posture right now, sitting there like chin down, incessant head nodding and the blinking in that, like it's giving Karen psychosis screaming at an IKEA worker, you know? That's what it's giving unstable. It's giving unstable, but that's not the point here. I'll often get comments of people saying that, oh, you're resorting to ad hominem and like attacking the person and you're not saying anything about their argument. Bestie, I can do both. I can do both. My argument has nothing to do with the fact that Miss Donna here seems unstable. Okay? But I'm also gonna say that Donna here looks unstable. They're completely separate and unrelated claims. One of them is evidence-based, and the other one is just me being a quirky girl. Because you're not only here for information, you're also here for my dazzling personality. Right? Okay.
to tell their parents if they're gay?
Yes.
I think that we need to be talking about, as adults, best practices for children. I think when a child comes out to their parents, it needs to be a conversation that is taken care of.
Why does she look so crazy right now? She's already giving fluff. She's had like 2 full sentences here of just exposition.
Local level, and things like developmental capacity, mental health issues.
So she's saying that you might not have the developmental capacity to come to the conclusion that you are queer in some way, or that you are suffering from a mental health issue that then precludes you to make the self-identification that you are queer in some way. Her mouth open like that is crazy. She's really gross.
All of these aspects, suicidal ideation, all of these aspects are unique in every single setting for every single child. So the staff in these schools supporting these children need to be able to reach out to parents in a time that is appropriate. So we're not saying that they should be outed. I think that that language needs to be thrown out. What we're doing now is enforcing secrecy. That can only endanger children. We need to make sure that parents are drawn into the conversation at the earliest possible moment for all of our students in schools. We're asking that the ministry shelve this bill and allow the schools, the parents, and the students to work together.
Everybody would still be working together under this legislation of Bill 24. Because if I was in that position and there was no concern about safety, I would try to encourage students to talk with their parents. Their parents are the best positioned people to support them throughout the very turbulent experience of just growing up, let alone growing up in a potentially homophobic home. But if a student came back to me and said, "Oh no, my parents are super homophobic, I can't say that to them," I wouldn't push it. Like, they know their parents better than I do. I'm not going to push you to do something, or even like pick up the phone and do something that then would risk the safety of a student. Are you kidding? No. No.
They say they don't teach sex education. And
Nobody's teaching anything in clubs. They're just hanging out, being weird. That's what clubs are. There's a teacher sitting in the corner on their lunch break, probably looking up alternative careers, applying to be a flight attendant. They're not teaching anything.
it is exempt from the automatic notification, parental notification. What do you say?
Okay, so the bottom line is we're not just talking about sexual education. The Alberta GSA network actually had community resource links that were found by a parent and former teacher that led to incredibly graphic sexual content. There are still experts with the Institute of Sexual Minority Studies and Services that deem incredibly graphic materials as appropriate for certain populations of these children in these clubs, like the A to Z sex cards. I wouldn't even be able to read these cards on air because they would be against the broadcasting regulations.
A to Z sex cards. All right, you got me, gal. I'll look. Oh boy. Okay, D is for dingleberry, the fecal remains that cling to your hair around the anus. You can't make jam with it, and it's no good on toast. Jesus Christ. Dingleberry consumption, like all fecal matter, can lead to parasites, hepatitis, and bad breath. Clean up before you chow down. Okay, well, I don't know if this is exactly what Donna's referencing, but even as a full-grown adult, I didn't want to read that. No, we don't need to be framing this in like a funky, quirky way that you have fecal matter stuck to the hair around your anus. What is happening? We can agree that this being given to children is not the move, but that also doesn't mean that that enforces everything else that you're saying just because of one bad apple, you know?
We're not talking about curriculum here. We're talking about sexual content. And if there was not an intention to introduce that type of content in these clubs, there would be no need for this amendment.
Why does she look like that? What is it? It's the eyes wide open. I can't even do it because I have a migraine, but she kind of looks like a puppet. And in this case, everybody doesn't love puppets.
in Bill 24 that removes the right of parents to be aware of this type of sexual content in these clubs.
So you believe that the government is lying about the intention of these clubs that are set up by kids?
Oh, good for her. Yes, CBC News.
I think that there is an overt attempt to exempt GSAs and associated clubs and activities from the opt-out provisions in 50.1 that state that there must be notification and opt-out opportunity for parents when sexual content is added into these clubs. This wouldn't be in the legislation.
But again, there's no curriculum for these clubs, so it doesn't really make sense. That might have been a resource that was passed between students, but if it was a resource that was given from a teacher to the students, then that is something that should be dealt with on that individual teacher level, not necessarily the entire GSA system within the province of Alberta. That's just not the same thing. That's a big overreach.
It's not a possibility in these clubs. I'm not going to say that there's dishonesty, but there's definitely
you're saying it's covert deception. So you are saying there's dishonesty. You are.
Attempt to exempt these clubs and activities, or this amendment would not be in the legislation.
What would you suggest for children who are from the LGBT community who need a safe space?
I'm from the LGBTQ community, and this is Valentina. She's an ally. Talk, Valentina.
Ally.
In their schools and want peer support?
I think that GSAs have a good place, and they are taking hold in many schools across the province. I think that they're appropriate and they're a safe place for these kids to go. I think based on the needs of the kids, taking into the nuance of exceptions with regards to these children, we can trust the local school. Loving parents across this province to work together to make sure that these children feel safe in these settings and in these clubs. And I don't think that we need heavy-handed legislation that would forbid schools from informing parents, take away their professional judgment, and possibly put children at risk because there are exceptions to their care that the school is not aware of, and they would only be aware of if parents are included. So I say shelve the bill and start trusting the good people, the professionals, and the loving parents in our communities to take care of our children. That is...
Trust the professionals. There's this Latin phrase when it comes to education. I forget what the Latin version is, but there is this idea of duty of care and acting as a parental figure when it comes to being a teacher or being an educator of a vulnerable population. So like an example of this is it's pretty well established that you don't put your hands on a student. But if I was crossing the street with a class and I saw a big truck who was about to run a stop sign and there was one student who was standing in the path of that truck, I would then put my hands on that student to pick them up and run them out of the way of the truck, right? So while you might be breaking rules in some sense, you would be still acting as the parent to keep the safety of that child as your top priority. And that's exactly what it is. It's triage of priorities of what will keep the student the safest in any given moment. So in this case, because this bill did pass, it subsequently was rescinded. Thanks a lot, Danielle Smith. I guess no, that was Ariana Grande. Just kidding. Ariana LaGrange. Keep up. So even if there was that rule that you could not tell students, if it was within my professional judgment that it would be better if these parents knew about their students' activity at school, I definitely would consider breaking that law. Which is a crazy thing to say. But if we look around the world, laws aren't always the right thing. They're not always the moral thing, and sometimes they're flawed. On the same token, if I knew that a parent was going to be abusive towards a child if I told them that their child was in a gay-straight alliance, I would not tell that parent. I would do whatever it took to keep somebody safe. That's the job of the professional. I guess she's advocating to not have that law so it's not black and white, cut and dry. But nothing is black and white, cut and dry, not only in the entire world, but as it relates to being a teacher in general. This is interesting. A big reason of why I wanted to talk about this is that this parental choice in education was starting to take hold. I believe their organization started in 2005, and they have been slowly picking up steam. And now that our province of Alberta is in full force conservative mode, They have once again come out of the shadows and they are doing rallies and all kinds of stuff. So I do have plans to go deeper into parental choice and education and their whole thing, but this was an interesting starter for me with Donna. There's like 2 minutes left. Let's finish up.
The job of the government.
Well, let me ask you one last question. What
Sure.
about those who have a prejudice against gay children, who think that for religious reasons or traditional reasons or for whatever, that this is something that they don't want to support, and as a result, they want to make sure that their children are not in such an alliance? What would you say to those parents?
Okay, ooh, this is it. This is your moment, Donna.
What I think that's a really good question. These are really difficult conversations. There's no doubt about it. But I don't think not having the conversation is the right answer.
What a cop-out answer. That doesn't make any sense. Even though the conversation is hard and you might be put through trauma, you should have them anyway. Because what? A 15-year-old student who is not fully neurologically developed yet is going to be able to navigate a conversation against a bigoted parent? Get a grip, Donna.
I think that if we have the right people in place, cautiously using mediation to help these conversations to happen, that's...
Even back then there wasn't support for that, but now in a current context, there is not enough support. If you think about the 30% of people who are either gender diverse or queer in some way, there is just no way that you are going to have the social services to support all of those conversations through mediation. As we've talked about before, even if you have mediation, even if you do everything in a nice, gentle, kumbaya, we're going to get everybody together kind of way, you're still not going to change the mind of the majority of bigots. They are still going to dislike the queer version of their child. It takes a lot of work to do that, and you can't do that in a one-session mediation in a school. It doesn't work like that.
Healthiest outcome for these families. And I would say, how is it that we are not even bothering to talk about how enforced secrecy does not allow for any sort of risk assessment? Why would we send children home to dangerous homes, possibly? We're doing that if we're not involving families in this conversation, if we're not having conversation with parents. We're taking children...
Okay, interesting. I can kind of see what she's saying here. So she's saying that if you out the child and the child goes home, and then the next day the child shows up with a black eye, then that serves as your risk assessment and you know that there's a problem at a home. I mean, that's not what she said, but that's kind of what I'm taking from it, is that if there's something that then happens, then you would need to do a risk assessment on it. So you're kind of putting the child in the line of fire to see if there's abuse. So that's not preventative, that's the other one. You do it before there's a problem and then you do it after it's reactionary, it's not preventative. So it's putting that child in a bad situation to see if the bad situation actually happens, so then you can attempt to repair it afterwards. I was more understanding to her side before I explained it to myself, and now I'm less on her side. You don't think the students know that it's going to be bad? They know if it's going to be bad. They might be overthinking it. I definitely did. I was very safe when I came out to my mom, but I was still terrified of doing so. I didn't think she was going to react badly, but from everything in the media, I thought there was a potential. But no, she basically told me that she already knew. I do not come from a place of experience when it comes to abuse in this specific way. When it comes to being queer, it was pretty smooth sailing for me, honestly, and that's a lot of privilege.
Possibly that wouldn't be safe, and just sending them home. There's no ability to even do risk assessment if we're not having these conversations. I think not having these conversations...
But you would be having a risk assessment. You would be calling to social services. No parent is exclusively abusive just when it comes to queer things. They would be abusive in other facets of life. It's kind of your approach to parenting instead of just a one-off strategy of how to not make your kids queer. You know, if they're shitty parents when their kid is gay, they're going to be shitty parents when they think their kid is straight. It's going to be the same no matter what.
probably the most dangerous direction to go with regards to the care of these kids.
All right, Donna Trimble, Executive Director of Parents for Choice in Education. Thank you for joining us from Calgary tonight, Donna.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Well, now it's Judge Judy. Can you tell what I watch all the time? Okay, girly wigs, thanks for getting to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I've been taking a bit of a different direction here with Dismantling Hate instead of finding, you know, big, outrageous things that are of the moment and clickbaity. I've been really honing down on my focus in the province of Alberta because I've recently had a lot of people from Alberta, my province, kind of dig into my content and connect with me in that way, and I'm really excited to do that. So if you've been watching these videos for a long time and you're like, what is an Alberta? I appreciate you still being here. And hey, if you're a homegirl from Alberta and you're not a redneck and homophobic and boot stomping horse girls, I mean, I was friends with all the horse girls in middle school and high school because, you know, most of them turned out to be lesbians. Anyway, yeah, this is all to say, subscribe to this channel if you like videos like this. I do put out new videos every week. If you've heard of parental choice in education, can you tell me like how you learned about them or what you learned about them down there in the comments? They've been on my radar for a short amount of time, but honestly, as it's been bubbling up behind the scenes, I had no idea they existed. And I think it's people and organizations like them who are really having their moment out here in not pop culture, but in the spotlight, I suppose, in Alberta in 2025. So it's really interesting to see how these little things grow from just, we can't enforce secrecy, all the way to teachers are indoctrinators. You know, it's a slippery slope. You get from one and it just, okay, yeah, make sure you like this video so the right-wing nuts don't tank my channel average for me. I'd really appreciate that. And I will see you in the next one with no more Donna. Goodbye. We're never going to see Donna again. She's the worst. You know, it so quickly goes from a Trump accent to King Julian from Madagascar. There's a gecko on my head. Is it still there?